I had a big RV that I had bought to take vacations in. After the Nairobi conference, I lent it to a Quaker friend, Alice Weiser, who took some of the other women and went from town to town with it, talking about the conference and about women in peace. Another woman, Gertrude Kauderer from Germany, drove a small van around, also talking about women in peace. Then I got a van for Ellen Dietrich and Fazia Jansen in Germany, and they drove it around Europe and finally all the way to Moscow. Then after several years, Susan Lee Solar was working for me in the foundation, and I bought another big RV that she turned into an anti-nuclear museum and drove everywhere, talking about the proposed nuclear waste dump in Sierra Blanca.
And the specific part of it that we're sitting in right now is a traveling anti-nuclear museum, a museum to end the nuclear age. I took it over the Southwest this summer with other wonderful women along with me. The project was conceived to alert the public and inform the public and gather stories from the public about the effects of the nuclear cycle on our economy, our health, our environment.
And how can our children live in an earth that's polluted, where chain reactions of horrible nuclear explosions are allowed to happen and, in fact, encouraged and paid for with our tax money? How can we do such a thing? I think it's really sad. And that is one reason why we built the temple to Sekhmet nearby here, to take a stand against this nuclear testing and to always be there as a little point against the destruction of the earth and for life on earth. A few years after I had been married, we went to Egypt on a trip. And I hadn't had any children, and we wanted children, and it seemed like I was going to never get pregnant. Well, we went to the temple of Luxor and went down in the, down some steps there. And the guide said, well, this here goddess sitting here is the goddess of fertility, and anybody that wants to get pregnant should make her a promise and ask her for a favor. And so I did that. I promised her a temple and asked her that I could get pregnant. And so just about a week later, I actually got pregnant. It was incredible. And for many years, I knew I had made that promise, and I had to maintain it. Coming out here, I thought, well, this is the place to do a temple to the goddess of fertility, because the nuclear radiation is so damaging for everyone's fertility that here we need to take our stand. So I bought the land, and we built this little temple to Sekhmet, who was the goddess that I had seen at the bottom of the stairs. I went ahead and got the temple built, asked the help of a group called Chaos.
I was lucky enough to be connected with a group of women that Genevieve chose to help build this wonderful temple. We camped here on the land. Then we worked off a generator and everything like that. We didn't have the facilities that we do now here.
Our rituals are very relaxed. We don't do a big production of costumes and memorizing. It's very laid back to enjoy, but reverence.
And it is a beautiful spot. It's an oasis in the desert. And there's a fire pit in the temple, so when Patricia does ceremonies, the fire glows at night, and they're copper hoops. The roof is made of copper hoops, and you can see the fire glowing out of the top, and it is just next to heaven. And you can sit there and look towards the test site and really vibe it good. And then I gave the land back to the Shoshone who owned all of this land at one point. And that seemed like the right thing to do. And I was so blessed because I was able to be in the ceremony of the giving back the land in 1992, which is a ceremony we did here on the land at Cactus Springs, and in which I restored this tiny piece of land back to the Western Shoshone. I had been outside the U.S. politics. I had been in Italy all during the civil rights movement, all during the feminist movement, and the goddess movement had happened too. It had begun to happen. And so as soon as I ran into that, I gave up my atheism in a flash and became immediately a goddess person, and started believing in magic and the earth and spirits of the earth and so forth, and that has sustained me now for many years.
Wings exists to carve out a space and to hold a space in broadcast media, in radio, for women's voices and the women's voices from around the world. So that's one of the things. You know, by being weekly and regular and keeping it up for now, it's been 15 years, we've been able to make sure that on a lot of these stations there is a space, they count on it being there, and they allow that women's voices to be on the air. Another purpose is to let the women be heard, and to give the women the gift of being heard, and to give the people who hear it the gift of those women's language, their ideas, and their experiences.
I met Genevieve like 8 months after she had already envisioned and created Feminist International Radio Endeavor and put it in my hands and Catarina and Fossi's hand in Costa Rica. When we decided to tackle the new technologies of internet and computers, we already had like 8 years of experience in international radio, and we decided to bring oral language to the internet because that is the type of communication where women do our best. Whether we speak well or not, it doesn't have anything to do with that. It has to do basically with the fact that women are the ones who carry the tradition of the oral language from generation to generation.
When broadcast for International Women's Day, coming to you live from the International Women's Tribune Center in New York.